Want to take a look behind the scenes at one of Disney's best parks, Animal Kingdom? Well, I just watched the third episode of Disney Plus's new Magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom from National Geographic. So stick with me and I'll break it down after the intro. Well, hello there. My name's Jeremy and welcome back to Freeform Disney, where I talk about all aspects of Disney, from the animated movies to the theme parks to Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar, and the TV shows, and everything else in between. And that is why it's Freeform. And keep coming back every day for new daily content. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Today we're watching the new documentary series Magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom. The third episode is called Betty and the Beast, so that means this time we're going to get to see some Babaroosas. So here's what went down. The single biggest section this time was all about the Hartman's Mountain Zebras. So first off, we got to go in and see them because they're moving them off to their new home over on the Kilimanjaro Safari. They've been off in a secret pasture for a while, where they keep some of the other animals prior to taking them out, or if there are other issues going on. Now, this is the first time they had ever had Hartman's Mountain Zebras over in the Kilimanjaro Safari. Not the first time there were zebras there at all, because way back, there actually were zebras for a little while, but only for a few months, and then they got taken out due to different acclimation issues that they just weren't working. So yeah, now there are finally zebras back over there. And we got to get introduced to the different ones. We had Domino horsing around, Primo over there, Heidi and Clementine, and love their brain, especially the youngest one, Clementine, definitely would break a little bit in there. And zebras are just fun to watch. They just are. And then we made a big deal about moving the zebras into the vehicle and tried to way over dramatize it, I'll say. Oh no, will Clementine make it? Tune in next week. Well, yeah, no, she makes it in. But that said, watching the procedure with the moving wall and how the keepers were able to stand behind the door in the vehicle, those kind of things I thought were really neat to see from a design standpoint, and I would have loved if we talked a little more about those kind of things as well, but that's fine. Then we got to watch them first get introduced to the savannah and all the different cast members that were around watching to make sure everything goes well. And really, that's kind of again, a surprising highlight of this show is just how much the cast members are a big element in this. And their excitement and enthusiasm here, it was just great. And it's interesting how the wildebeest also, we talk about them a good bit here in this episode, because the poor wildebeest, the very curious but easily startled wildebeest who will just go off and stampede. So always one of the questions when you introduce anything new to them, huh? And hey, we also got to watch the giraffe gallop around a little, which was great. And then we moved on because Primo was pregnant. And Domino being the father of this one, which Domino's the main breeding male. So you'll see Domino be the father of quite a number of foals over here in Animal Kingdom. And then eventually, well, we get the new one, and it's a baby male 65 pounds, which apparently is a good thing, which, dang, so big. And we got to watch Freeman, the new boy, head out onto the savannah for the first time. And back to those wildebeest being the big challenge. Heck, that was what they were really worried about, was what if the wildebeest get in there and actually separate the foal from his mother? So I'm curious what they would have done exactly if the foal had gotten separated that way and it was in some danger from the wildebeest. We never got that one explained, but I'm sure they had something ready for that. Some kind of minimally invasive way of succeeding at taking care of that problem. But wasn't a problem anyway, because the foal was so well behaved, sticking with his mother, and they went back and kept their distance from the wildebeest, while they went off and stampeded around a little bit, trained themselves with their excitement. And yeah, that was super fun. Love zebras. Love the other animals in there too, the giraffes and the wildebeest and everybody else. And we had some great keepers in there too, Jeff, Megan, Nicole, and Kendall, who were all so much fun. And oh man, they were so excited about everything going on here. Well, that brings us on to our next section, the Babaroosas. And this story was all about breeding the Babaroosas. So over at Animal Kingdom, they have never actually had a baby Babarusa before. And Betty, their Babarusa they've had for a little bit, well, they brought in Mentari, the male, to go ahead and hopefully breed the two of them. And it was interesting the different personalities between them, Mentari being so much more calm and Betty being, well, the one that would run around a bit more and also be more nervous too. And cool tusks on Mentari, by the way. We got to watch them go through the whole process of introducing the two to each other, and they used these adjoining rooms that had this little grated window. And hey, that worked. 9 days after the first visit, well, we got to go ahead and see them humping a little, and hey, 2 months later, ultrasound time, and yep. And hey, we had two Dans in there for a moment. We had both Keeper Dan and Dr. Dan both in there. Seeing the ultrasound, definitely cool. Both you got to see the heartbeat and also the skeletal structure of the fetus that was in there. It's like, oh, so cool. And the cast members all were so affected by this. You had Emily in the background and then Dan on the verge of tears getting to see that ultrasound. And yeah, as I said, back to that comment on the keepers and just how much seeing the cast members can really play into this. And then, hey, after a 3-month gestation, pretty short. Well, we got to see the new pig at the end, although this wasn't with the main camera crew. You could tell it was just the cameras that you normally have at Animal Kingdom for these kind of things. And so, yeah, there you go. So that was the first new one there. Although, one thing I've got to note about this section had the most cheesy dialogue for Josh Gad in the entire episode. Overall, the episode was actually better on the cheesy dialogue, but this section, whew, dang. And then we moved on to our third animal for the day, Lou the West Indian Manatee. Oh, and I feel for poor Lou. Poor Lou lost 90% of his tail in a boating incident before he came over to Animal Kingdom. Or actually, sorry, not Animal Kingdom, he was over at EPCOT over the seas. Speaking of Animal Kingdom, that was actually what was going on this time because they were worried about a potential infection in his tail, so they needed to get him all the way over to Animal Kingdom to go ahead and do a CAT scan on him. And that was the first time they've ever attempted to do a high-definition CAT scan on a manatee over at Walt Disney World. So they had to pull him out via a giant crane, keep him warm, because I guess it was actually an unusually cold day down in Florida, and then transport him over. Here's what got really interesting is they had a lot of trouble with the scan. And usually in this show so far, we don't really ever see them fail. Here, they actually did. I mean, they figured out something that would makeshift work at the end. But the big CAT scan machine, well, it didn't work because the hydraulic table he was on wouldn't actually lift him, even though supposedly it should have. He's 1,800 pounds, but it wasn't pulling it off. So they're like, okay, we'll bring in the smaller one. And that was lowered to the ground, but that didn't work because ultimately it was too small for the massive manatee Lou. And so it started overheating. So eventually they've got to take him outside and they just start doing some x-rays instead. Because, hey, at least that'll be something. And by that point, they're having to wake Lou up from the anesthesia while they're already doing the x-rays. You just can't keep somebody under anesthesia for too long. It's a dangerous thing to do. Even though for manatees, apparently they are a little more stable under anesthesia at least. So, hey, it worked in the end. They were able to figure out there was no infection. And it was cool to see Dr. Natty again. And then we also saw Dr. Deidre. And man, what a crew of cast members it took to go ahead and pull all of that off. Wow. And then there was one last section. There's always 4 sections, it seems, within these episodes. Only one time have we gotten 4 different sets of animals. This time, the 4th section was actually pretty short. And I think the extra time seemed to all go over to the zebras, which I'm not complaining about right there. So the last section was kind of a little behind the scenes on the Kilimanjaro Safari. So we got to talk to Megan a fair bit, who was the attraction host there, and see her do the test truck ride through the ride path in the morning before the first actual ride with guests goes out, where they check the ride path, see the water levels are all good, make sure everything's just doing well. And got to see her even get delayed by ducks a bit. But the really fun part there was the morning vocalizations of the lions. Can never see enough lions right there. Now, I'd love to hear that in the morning. I'm not a morning person, but I could make an exception for that. And we also got to hear a little from the executive creative designer of the park, Joe, who's one of our Disney Imagineers, and we saw him in the first episode a little during the tree being constructed and going up. And he just went and talked a lot about conservation and how important he finds that in terms of Animal Kingdom. And even a little comment about how the Messiah giraffe actually weren't endangered when they were first brought into Animal Kingdom, but they are now. And so, yeah, just a nice touch on continuing to push the conservation side here while we're talking about the rest of the animals in Animal Kingdom and EPCOT's The Seas. Personally, this episode here was my favorite one yet. Not my favorite set of animals, though. That's got to go to last week when we had gorillas, lions, macaws, and spotted eagle rays. But that also had a bit of an unfair advantage of having 4 sets of animals, where this week you had only 3. I just thought the flow of this episode worked better this week, and I think the narration was a little less cheesy than usual, except for the Babaroosas. But what can you do? And so much of this episode felt like it was getting to watch the zebras. And I love, love, love zebras. Now, don't ask me if I prefer zebras or giraffes. Unlike Jeff the Keeper, I can't just go tell you that zebras are easily better than giraffes. It would be a tough decision between the two for me. But anyway, getting to look at the zebras so much definitely helped elevate this episode. And getting to see giraffes in the background didn't hurt either, I suppose. And hopefully all of you are still enjoying me doing this video, even though it's on a Saturday now due to having the new Right Stuff episodes yesterday. My plan is that it will be on Saturdays from here on out through probably the end of the show. But things are going to get a little tricky at the end of the month when The Mandalorian also gets added to the roster, so we'll see exactly what happens when we get there. And hey, I'm definitely excited to keep watching the series and see another episode next week. And well, what about you? Which one was your favorite animal this time? Pretty sure you know mine, the zebras. And what did you think about getting to see all the troubles they had to go through with Lou and the CAT scan? Let me know down below in the comments. And as always, thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, help me out and give it a like, a share, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you back here again tomorrow for another new episode of Freeform Disney. Have a magical day, and may the Force be with you. Always.